In 1932, Australia sent soldiers with machine guns to fight birds. The birds won. In 1859, the United States and Great Britain aimed 5 warships, 2,000 men, and 70 cannons at each other because a farmer shot a pig. Both of these are real wars. Both are on the historical record. And today we're putting them head to head to answer one question. Which was the dumber war? Round 1. Whose war started in the dumber way? After World War I, the Australian government had a brilliant idea. Give returning soldiers free farmland in Western Australia. The soil was terrible. The rain barely showed up. The government promised subsidies and then apparently lost the paperwork. And then, in 1932, a drought pushed roughly 20,000 emus straight into the newly cleared farmland. 20,000 6-foot-tall, flightless birds who looked at rows of government-subsidized wheat and essentially said, "Thank you for your service."
They trampled crops, ripped through fences, and held the door open for rabbits to flood in behind them. The farmers, being veterans who understood that problems are best solved with automatic weapons, asked the Minister of Defense for machine guns. The minister agreed, partly, according to the historical record, because he thought the birds would make good target practice. Now let's look at what started the other one. June 15th, 1859. San Juan Island, a patch of land both the United States and Great Britain claimed because a treaty used the word channel, and there happened to be 2 of them. An American farmer named Lyman Cutler walks outside and finds a British-owned pig elbow-deep in his potato garden. Not for the first time. Cutler grabbed his shotgun and resolved the matter permanently. He then walked over to the pig's owner, Charles Griffin of the Hudson's Bay Company, and offered $10 to settle things. Griffin demanded $100. Cutler said the pig was not worth $10. Griffin threatened to have him arrested. And just like that, a $90 disagreement over a dead pig became an international military crisis. Pig War takes round 1. The Emu War at least started with a genuine crisis. Veterans watching their last hope get eaten alive by birds taller than most of them. The Pig War started because 2 men could not agree on the market price of pork. 1-0, Pig War. Round 2. Whose response was more out of proportion? Australia looked at 20,000 crop-destroying emus and sent 3 men. 3. Major Meredith, Sergeant McMurray, and Gunner O'Halloran arrived with 2 Lewis guns and 10,000 rounds of ammunition. 3 soldiers against a bird population the size of a small town. That is not a proportional military response. That is a strongly worded letter with a trigger. But the Pig War makes Australia look like a model of restraint. After Cutler shot the pig, American settlers panicked and called for military protection. Brigadier General William Harney, whose primary qualification was a deep, personal hatred of the British, sent Captain George Pickett with 66 soldiers to occupy the island. That is the same George Pickett who later led the most famous failed charge in American history at Gettysburg. The man had a gift for showing up where things were about to go wrong. The British governor sent 3 warships, then 2 more. By the end of August, 461 American soldiers with 14 cannons were dug in on one end of a small island, facing 5 British warships carrying over 2,000 men and more than 70 guns. Over a pig that ate potatoes. Rear Admiral Lambert Baines arrived, surveyed the combined naval firepower of the British Empire pointed at a potato field, and reportedly said he would not involve 2 great nations in a war over a squabble about a pig. He was apparently the only adult in the room. Pig War takes round 2. 3 men against 20,000 emus is laughably inadequate, but mobilizing the firepower to flatten a city because someone shot a farm animal, that earns its own page in the Encyclopedia of Overreaction. 2-0, Pig War. Round 3. Whose strategy failed harder? Before you write off the Emu War, this is where it starts earning its reputation. After the first disaster, the military pulled out on November 8th. The emus, unbothered, kept eating. Farmers begged for another attempt. So on November 13th, Major Meredith was sent back. Same officer, same guns, same birds who had already proven they did not care. By the 4th day, Army observers noticed something that should probably concern anyone who thinks humans are the smartest species on the continent. The emus had organized a sentry system. Each flock now had a leader, a big, black-plumed bird standing fully 6 feet tall that kept watch while the others fed and sounded the alarm when soldiers approached. The Australian Army was being outmaneuvered by an animal whose entire military training consisted of being an emu. Meredith mounted a Lewis gun on the back of a truck. The ride was so rough the gunner could not fire. The emus outran the truck anyway. After 6 weeks, Meredith's official report claimed 986 confirmed kills, a number historians politely describe as highly inflated. Even taking him at his word, he eliminated less than 5% of the enemy. His report noted that his men suffered no casualties except for their dignity. He then compared the emus to Zulu warriors and wrote that they could face machine guns with the invulnerability of tanks. About birds. In an official document submitted to the Australian government. The Pig War's strategy was a different kind of masterpiece. Both sides dug in with textbook precision. The Americans built a fortified earthwork. The British lobbed cannonballs into the bluffs for practice. And then officers from both camps attended Sunday church together aboard HMS Satellite and retired to Charles Griffin's living room for whiskey and cigars. The same Charles Griffin whose pig started the whole thing. Tourists sailed over from Victoria on excursion boats to watch the standoff. The commanders declared Christmas truces every year for joint feasting. No shots were ever fired at each other. The entire military strategy on both sides was to look as dangerous as possible while having an absolutely lovely time. Emu War takes round 3. The Pig War was a 13-year armed holiday, absurd but harmless. Australia went to war with flightless birds using military weapons, and the birds won. Twice. 2-1, Pig War still leads. Round 4. Whose leaders failed their people worse? This is where the jokes stop for a moment. The farmers behind the Emu War were not a punchline. They were World War I veterans who had spent years in the trenches of Europe. They came home to a government promise of good farmland and got drought, dead soil, and subsidies that never showed up. By 1932, they were already going broke before the emus arrived. Calling in the army was not stupidity. It was the last resort of men who had been abandoned by the same government that sent them to war in the first place. The real failure was not theirs. It was the politicians who made promises they never intended to keep and then sent 3 men with 2 guns as a solution. That the whole episode became the internet's favorite joke is its own kind of cruelty toward people who had already given more than enough. The Pig War, by contrast, was bloodless in every way that matters. No one fought. No one was harmed by the dispute itself. About a dozen men died during the 13 years of occupation, from drowning, knife fights, and illness. But none of it had anything to do with a pig or potatoes. The worst you can say about the leadership is that General Harney was reckless and everyone else was slow. But no one suffered for it. No one's livelihood was destroyed. Emu War takes round 4. A government that breaks its promise to veterans and then sends 3 soldiers as a band-aid carries real blame. The Pig War's leaders were foolish, but ultimately harmless. 2-all. Round 5. Which war left the dumber legacy? Everything comes down to this. After Meredith withdrew in December 1932, Australian farmers requested military assistance again in 1934, 1943, and 1948. The government said no every single time. Instead, they quietly brought back the bounty system, and ordinary civilians with rifles killed over 57,000 emus in 6 months in 1934. The solution to the emu problem had never been machine guns on trucks. It was just letting regular people handle it without turning it into a military operation and inviting a Fox movie-tone cameraman along. And then there is the coat of arms. The emu sits on Australia's official national coat of arms. The animal that defeated the Australian Army is on the country's shield. Australia looked at the species that humiliated its military and said, "Put it on the logo." The Pig War's resolution was quieter, but no less absurd. 13 years of joint occupation ended in 1872 when Kaiser Wilhelm I of Germany, a man with no connection to pigs, potatoes, or the Pacific Northwest, arbitrated the dispute
and awarded the islands to the United States.
Two English-speaking empires needed a German emperor to settle a border argument that started with a shotgun and a potato patch.
And the American lieutenant who designed the camp's fortifications during the standoff, Henry M. Robert, went on to write Robert's Rules of Order, the definitive guide on how civilized people are supposed to resolve disagreements. The man who built defenses for a war over a dead pig literally wrote the book on not doing that. Emu War takes round 5 in the whole thing, 3-2. The Pig War gave us Robert's Rules of Order and a lesson in international arbitration. The Emu War gave us a country that put its military defeat on the national shield and spent the next 2 decades asking the army to please come back and try again. One war accidentally produced a guide to civilized conflict resolution. The other produced the only coat of arms in history that doubles as a reminder of a loss to flightless birds.
The Pig War was a dumb reason to almost start a war. The Emu War was a dumb reason to actually fight one and lose to an animal that cannot fly twice. One last thing, the emus are still out there, over 600,000 of them roaming the Australian outback, still 6 feet tall, still 30 miles an hour, still undefeated, and still on the coat of arms, which, if you think about it, makes Australia the only country whose national symbol is also a military opponent with a winning record. Would you rather fight 20,000 emus or one angry pig farmer? Let me know below.